Today is Thursday, June the 20th, 2024, the first day of summer. And today I'm going to finish up deconstructing the transgender versus detransitioners debate that Jubilee did. And I want to start by acknowledging the previous two videos I did as reels, asking the question why detransitioners would be the best advocates for environmental protection in 2024. Two other things I want to make sure I mention is that I hate all bullies indiscriminately. And that's important for the way that I am going to address some of the issues that come up deconstructing the answers people are giving in this particular debate. And the other is that in 2024, part of the criteria for being selected for the transgender upgrades into a more authentically genetic appearance for those who would be used in the media is that you must be able to defend the lie. So you have to be a really good liar. And the only way that you can overcome an argument with a liar is to know the truth, to have common sense, and to know who they are when they're off camera, or when you're not in the middle of a debate, or when you're not in a situation where you can't access reference material, because they are taught and trained to defend the lie. So they are well equipped with every possible argument that is made relative to transitioning your gender to the opposite gender. So they're prepared, but the only way that you can defeat that is to know who they are personally, because the things that they say when they're on camera or behind a microphone are not always the lives that they live or even the things that they believe. And so I think it's really important for people who have been bullied into a certain belief because they were told they were being offensive or they were being homophobic or whatever terms were used, that you appreciate that the criteria for these kinds of upgrades is that you must be able to defend the lie, and you must be able to defend it very well. And that makes sense, right? For the people who have already watched the debate and then follow my Facebook or the community in YouTube, I offered this vocabulary quiz in preparation of my making and then releasing this particular video. So the first thing I want to do is to look at some of the definitions that were given in the video and ask you to question whether definitions and research and so on and so forth from an agency like Planned Parenthood is really relevant to people who are confused about feelings they're having that would make them dysphoric. Here are some answers to the vocabulary quiz, and the ones that are not listed in these next two slides I'm going to talk about more in detail in a moment.
themselves. Look at the suicide rate of transmasculine folks. It is at 55%. And one of the factors that could save their lives is support, right? And so if we have folks that are committing suicide because they're not allowed to transition, how do we fix that? If
I
you're telling
think
me the transition
the
for
first thing-
children or minors is something that shouldn't be done.
The first here, I am very sensitive to this subject, as I've been the person who has had to talk people off the ledge when it comes to suicidality. The discussion around how we talk about suicide is a very dangerous one in this community. You know, my parents were told, do you want a dead daughter or a living son? That's not an appropriate way to talk about that.
And I understand that, but it is our transmasculine youth
I understand
that are at the highest risk
I understand
of
that,
suicide.
and they deserve help. But we also need to have a responsible conversation that is not using suicide as a means to push them down a pipeline before they have that comprehensive care.
What I'm going to say is we insult children, our youth, so much by taking away their autonomy and their own agency over their own decisions and insulting that they know who they are. Like an adult knows who they are more than they do. No one knows who I am more than I do.
Right.
And it's always been that way. I've always known who I was. I've never felt like I was in the wrong body. I just had to adjust my body. And so I think taking away kids' agency and the right to their own body is, it's anti-human.
I have a question. Do you believe minors should be able to get tattoos or plastic surgery or consent to the list of other?
I
understand they are different things, but to what level do we? To what level do we give children bodily autonomy over everything they do? Because here's the thing, children need barriers in childhood development. You need barriers, and they need a safe way to push against those barriers. And I worry with the current medical system that instead of giving them a safe way to express themselves and push against barriers, we have taken some of those barriers away. And that is why you see more detransitioners, because those barriers have been lifted.
Yeah, they're not just doling out surgeries for children. That's not happening
I had a
anywhere.
letter from a therapist in a single visit at the gender clinic office
And
before
that
I
was
had
abuse
the first.
from that therapist who did not psychoanalyze
awful.
the rest
That
of
should
your
not
issues.
happen.
Right, and that shouldn't
because
happen.
Shouldn't
your
happen
issues
to
weren't
you.
being trans. There were a lot of other issues that you're
I have a
addressing right
diagnosis
now.
of gender dysphoria as
And
well.
you shouldn't. You were misdiagnosed.
No, I have one.
Right.
Yeah, you had to get a second opinion, honey.
Right.
And how was
Can
how was I supposed to do that when my parents were told
That's
that I
not
would
your
kill
fault.
myself?
But your
Yeah, that's not your
parents,
fault.
your parents,
Their biggest crime in all this was trusting a medical system that they thought would help me, and the professionals apparently not doing the right thing here.
I understand, but your
Yeah,
parents were
absolutely
responsible for the decisions that were made on your behalf.
I think that what this really highlights is the importance of you sharing your story.
Why is being consistent important? What would cause you or a person to be inconsistent? If you have the truth is an absolute defense, because no matter how many different ways the question is asked, the answer will always remain the same because it is the truth. When is it important for something to be specific? What would interfere with there being an ability to specify something? When is it not necessary or important for understanding for something to be specific? Under what circumstances or conditions? What is the purpose and function of labeling? Why is labeling important? When are labels unhelpful? In what kinds of situations and circumstances? A good thing to consider is how people learn language. How do you identify objects? How do you define the term professional? What qualifications would a person need to have to be considered a professional? When making a determination about who to trust with decisions that will directly impact your health, your relationship, your family, your means of living, how would you determine whether the person who is a professional is qualified to help or to make those decisions with or for you. What is a mental illness? How would you classify a person as mentally ill? When you think of the word illness, what images come to mind? When you think of the word illness, how should illnesses be addressed?
My thoughts on social media and everyone suddenly looking or being trans. I think whoever is leaning towards that or looking towards being trans for answers was always someone that felt that way or felt some type of way about their gender or their identity or the way they present themselves. They're just going to go that way. I know plenty of femme twinks who went the muscle queen pipeline. It's not a rare occurrence. And so just experience your life, have fun. Try not to take social media seriously because no one is advertising their failures. It's all fake.
Yeah, but I think it is also important to say that, like, social media is very, very effective. You know, I mean, I personally scroll on TikTok and I'm like, do I have OCD? Do I have autism? Like all these different things. And like, it can suck you in. So it's important to be aware of those things.
I have a question for Samantha, since you have the largest platform here. Do you believe over the years you've inspired people to transition?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that I've inspired people to believe that it's okay to be transgender, it's okay to express themselves, and that it's possible to live a happy and successful life.
How do you feel about the fact that some of them are going to regret the body modifications they got and going to have like...
I think that they should go to a doctor that is well-versed in gender care and have the appropriate psychoanalytic analysis done beforehand. That's not my best.
Right.
And I'm also, I try my best to be very upfront about the
Because
issues
we can't
of
help if
transition.
someone's going to change their mind on something. Like, that's inevitable.
Yeah.
We're humans.
And I have to jump on one more thing with that. Like, if I'm watching her channel and it inspires me to transition, I have been watching white straight men be president for years, and I've not wanted to be president once. So I don't identify with that. If we're going to talk about brainwashing, let's talk about where we see things every single day happening a certain way versus someone just living their life authentically. If we're going to talk about brainwashing, let's talk about where we see things every single day happening a certain way versus someone just living their life authentically. And so just experience your life, have fun, try not to take social media seriously because no one is advertising their failures. It's all fake. If we're going to talk about brainwashing, let's talk about where we see things every single day happening a certain way versus someone just living their life authentically.
What do you imagine the impact would be of physical abuse, especially sexual abuse, in childhood? What is domestic violence? What is domestic terrorism? How might a child define those phrases? Should a child be able to define those phrases?
People with gender dysphoria need therapy, not surgery.
I guess. Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that one.
I don't.
I've been convinced.
We all agree.
I personally confused a lot of my gender dysphoria for body dysmorphia because no matter how much I feminize my body, till today I still don't feel comfortable in my own body. And now, like, looking among like members of trans community, I see that people keep on getting more and more surgeries. The surgeries are no longer affirming. You can just tell that this person is like struggling with body images. I was able to get on estrogen pretty quickly when I was 22, and my mental health declined afterwards, and I attributed it to being still in the wrong body, needing more body modification, end up getting sex reassignment surgery. I do believe that transition was sold to me as a hardware fix for my mental issues that were not addressed. I still struggle with internalized homophobia that pushed me into transition in the first place. I struggle with borderline personality disorder, body dysmorphia. I'm on a spectrum, and I'm ADHD, and I have all those issues that were not helped, and I was still struggling with them after transition, and I still do. Overall, after a few years, I came to a conclusion that I was not in the wrong body, that I'm a gender non-conforming man, and I am a feminine man. That's what I am.
I don't know if you guys have heard, but I've had a lot of binary trans people say that it's not a mental health issue. Like, if you're trans, and I know I don't agree with that. Like, I think there's a disconnect between the mind and the body. I guess I'm asking that. Like, is like, do you think that it's a mental health disorder? And
I don't
needs to
think
have
being
therapy?
transgender is a mental health disorder.
Right.
I think, you know, gender incongruence is what they're referring to it as now. It's listed as a sexual health concern, but the gender dysphoria, which is the symptom that arises when you are transgender, is a mental health concern.
So maybe I'm thinking of, that's what I'm trying to say then in a sense.
And then once you are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and I feel like this is kind of what the prompt is kind of hinting at, if you do have gender dysphoria, the only treatment for that is transition. If you do have gender dysphoria, the only treatment for that is transition. If you do have gender dysphoria, the only treatment for that is transition.
Right.
Whether that be just a social transition, a medical transition, whatever transition fits you, that is the only way to heal your gender dysphoria. When I transitioned, the first thing my mom said to me was, "Can't you just be gay?" It hurt hearing that, but a big reason that she said that was she was afraid of what my dad would think. He's always been very, very conservative, very traditional, you could say. He would make comments about trans people, about gay people growing up, so I always knew that he wasn't necessarily accepting. So when it came down to me transitioning, I said to him, I'm going to do this. Either you're going to be the dad that accepts me and supports me through it, or like, goodbye. And he chose to support me, and we're closer than ever now.
And I think a lot of us go through medical transitions to easier go through social transition. What I'm going to say is we insult children, our youth, so much by taking away their autonomy and their own agency over their own decisions and insulting that they know who they are. Like, an adult knows who they are more than they do. No one knows who I am more than I do.
Right.
And it's always been that way. I've always known who I was. I've never felt like I was in the wrong body. I just had to adjust my body. And so I think taking away kids' agency and the right to their own body is, it's anti-human.
I have a question. Do you believe